Today I'm going to talk about the extinction of the used car as we know it. Extinction might sound a bit dramatic, but I use that word very intentionally. Now this isn't going to be a video that's aimed at any particular category of car. It's not a stab at EVs or hybrids or anything like that. This is a much bigger systematic issue, one that affects all of us. Now I spoke in the past about there being three distinct levels to a car's life, and let me cover them briefly here. So level one, when the car's brand new, under warranty, you get it straight from the dealership. Level two, when that car hits, let's say 4 or 5 years old, the lease expires, the original owner wants to swap it for the nice new car once again, get the shiny new thing. Now that is still a very good, but very expensive way of going about getting a used car. In level three is when the car is hitting 10, 15 years old, where people like me, and probably you, tend to buy. And I tell you what, we've been spoiled for choice in the years gone by. Even right now, there's still plenty of good used cars in this category, even if prices have started to increase. I'm talking here about reliable, easy to work on cars that can be picked up on a fairly modest budget. It's this level 3 car that's most endangered. And that's a problem, because who runs these cars? The everyday working class backbone of Britain. Whether that's a young family trying to make ends meet, or someone who just doesn't want to take on a £500 a month car payment. Just as the car started out as being reserved for the wealthier members of society, so it shall return. And here's why. Now again, I've spoken about this before, but I need to again. Cars today are just not built with the same longevity as they used to be. Maybe that's coming with no surprise now, maybe you've heard that before. Manufacturers, they haven't just suddenly forgotten how to build cars, of course. That's not the problem. There's two reasons behind the downfall of modern reliability and therefore longevity, which is needed for a car to reach that third level of its life where someone like me or you would go out and buy it. First, here in the UK, we've got these relentless government-imposed short-sighted emission standards. I'll get on to why I describe them as short-sighted in just a moment. As a result of these standards, manufacturers have been forced to replace the once low-stressed, relatively large capacity engines with tiny, highly strung turbocharged ones. Bulletproof torque converter automatic gearboxes have largely been axed for delicate dual-drive clutches that offer fractionally less emissions. Wet belts offering an average 1% increase in economy also found their way into many an engine and caused many a problem and introduced a whole new aspect of expensive maintenance. The reason why I say these on-paper emission standards are short-sighted is because in the government's quest for marginally cleaner mechanical technologies, they've lost sight of the bigger picture. The most environmentally friendly engine, within reason, is the one that requires minimal spare parts or replacement throughout a long service life. This focus on laboratory emissions but no consideration of production, longevity or even repairability is, I think, the absolute epitome of short-sightedness. You could have a super clean 900cc engine, seems great on paper, but it's not much good in practice if you're having to replace it 5 times in the 10-year lifespan that car is going to have, if it even makes it that far. By the time you chalk up all the mining for the material, the refining of the material, the casting and all the energy intensive manufacturing that goes along with it. But somehow, that doesn't seem to matter. Now that brings me neatly onto the second problem here. The manufacturers themselves. Having worked in the automotive engineering world, I've seen it time and time again. Virtual testing has now become so advanced in this world that you can quite literally name how long you want a part to last and have it optimized around that number. To make an aluminium intake manifold or a water pump housing with an infinite fatigue life, for example, that's far more expensive to do than make a plastic one which will have enough life to see the warranty out plus a year or two. 20 years ago, designing parts like this was a far riskier game. You didn't have that same software-based assurance that you do now. And we need to talk about repairability as well. We need to mention repairability in this because it's always been a key component to keeping these level 3 cars going. I'll give you an example. My little Jazz that I owned that got me back and forth to uni, I had to do a clutch on it and eventually I had to do a fuel pump as well. No big deal. I saved up, I got the non-genuine, cheaper parts and gathered a couple of buddies to help out with getting it fixed up. And we'd done it over a weekend and I paid them in pizza. That sort of driveway repair that lets you keep these old cars running on a shoestring, it just isn't going to be possible. It's not going to be possible because, for one, most new cars that need a fuel pump or even a single injector, they need to be coded in by the manufacturer themselves. You need the manufacturer software which ties you into using them, and you'll also need to use their expensive OEM parts or the car will just reject it. The rise of hybrid technology means that now even small, simple city cars, Peugeot 208 for instance, now has a complex dry dual clutch gearbox with a hybrid motor built into it, and I'll tell you right now, no one is replacing those clutch plates on their driveway and no one is accepting pizza as payment for doing that either. In fact, I think you'll find when you encounter these problems, even the dealership is just going to try and replace that with a complete unit, a complete gearbox for some extortionate price. So this is where you tend to get people saying, well, why not just go electric then? If engines have become so unreliable, then these third level buyers, they should turn to electric. There's a benefit of the massive depreciation that comes along with an electric vehicle. But not so fast on this train of thought, because we're forever being told, aren't we, that EVs are so simple, there's far less to go wrong. But it's just not the case. They're just differently complicated. You've got this 500 kilo battery underneath it filled with thousands of cells, its own management system, its own cooling system, and meters of high voltage cabling. Doesn't sound very simple, does it? And somewhere, likely in its third level of ownership, that battery is going to require replacement. And when it does, there's a good likelihood that you'll be facing down a 5-figure bill to do it. And even although many of these cars are still relatively young, they're being written off by defective batteries, leaving owners in the lurch with a car payment still to make. An EV, in many ways, is the absolute epitome of what we're talking about here. Cars with short-sighted emissions credentials, built with an expiry date, that are tied into closed-loop, dealership-only parts and service, making them completely uneconomical as they get older. So, it doesn't really matter whether you're looking at hybrids, which also have a battery that will require replacement at some point, a full electric vehicle, or combustion. Extinction is on the horizon for these level 3 cars, and if we lose them, we lose the freedom that the combustion engine afforded all of us in the first place, not just those of us with a bit of money behind us. And worst of all, it doesn't need to be this way. It just doesn't. If we truly want greener cars, then mandate longevity. Score cars on repairability and incentivize those that are easily fixed so that they provide a long service life and don't wind up being written off and in some junkyard somewhere at 5 years old. Encourage good, long-lasting design and lose this blinkered, discriminatory approach. And as I said, thankfully for now, there are still plenty of good used cars available, and if you do opt to buy one of those, which wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, please do remember, one of our channel sponsors is Vehicle Score, and they provide HPI checks that will tell you if a car's ever been subject to a write-off, if it's got any outstanding finance, and a whole host of other information that you're going to want to know. This is the one that I genuinely use whenever I go off and buy a used car. I'll add a link and a 20% discount in the description below. But as ever, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, found it insightful, please do hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and I'll see you next time.